A big hit to the Cubs rotation as Justin Steele is lost for the season with an elbow injury. I have 2 trade targets, a wild card acquisition, and an internal arm that could salvage their rotation this season. But will the Cubs actually make a move? Do they have the resources to do so? Let's talk about it today on the Cubs Daily Podcast. We'll start with a big win in Los Angeles. The Cubs take the rubber match from the Dodgers 4-2 in what was another fantastic performance by Pete Crow Armstrong in Hollywood. He had 2 home runs, a triple, and he took part in 3 of the Cubs' 4 runs. His first homer was a really impressive swing on a fastball up from Tyler Glasnow. Second one off Blake Trinan, a notoriously tough reliever to barrel. Even more encouraging, perhaps, Colin Ray and Brad Keller go a combined 5 innings, 5 hits, an earned run, 2 walks, and 6 strikeouts. The big news of the day, however, is that Justin Steele is lost for the season. We're uncertain right now, per ESPN's Jeff Passan, if it's full Tommy John surgery where they completely reconstruct the ligament entirely, or if it's primary repair or internal brace where the UCL is intact and they resupport the ligament. But regardless, it's a huge hit. Coming into this season, this Cubs rotation had 2 arms projected as 2 WAR or greater pitchers, which is kind of that standard, that 2 WAR mark, to consider a guy an above average starting pitcher. Those 2 names were Shota Imanaga and Justin Steele, and now we're left with just 1. The obvious trade pieces to go after are the Marlins' Sandy Alcantara and the Twins' Pablo Lopez. Lopez is under contract at about $22 million through the 2027 season. The Twins have been rumored in team sales. They've underperformed the last few seasons, and Lopez is the 2nd largest contract on that roster right now next to Carlos Correa. So it makes sense that they would move him. He's on the injured list right now with a hamstring injury, probably nothing long term. And if the Cubs were willing to take on some money, he becomes an option that probably wouldn't cost too much from a prospect capital side of things. Sandy Alcantara, on the other hand, is coming off Tommy John surgery. He hasn't been that great this season so far, but his velocity looks fine. He's actually said in a post-game interview that he hasn't been bouncing back as quickly as he did pre-surgery. I've always thought that nothing Sandy does through May matters for the Marlins as an organization or the rest of the league in terms of valuing him, given that they're basically grooming him to be traded in July unless somebody blows them away with a package before then. But the main issue with Sandy is that for teams, it's more of a multi-year play. He's under contract next season at about $17.3 million, where he'll be more confidently deployed a year plus removed from surgery. Because of that, I think the Marlins are going to want prospect capital as opposed to pure monetary appeasement in terms of that deal. And listen, the Cubs system is really strong. It's graded as a top 10 system by MLB.com and our guy Jim Callis. But I think they have a few pieces that other organizations don't value as much as the team does internally or perhaps public circuit does around the sport. Those 3 pieces are Moises Ballesteros. The question here is whether he's actually a catcher. Owen Casey has had some injury issues, probably more of a platoon corner outfielder. Yeah, he does have insane pop, but that's kind of besides the point as to how he would fit in most teams. And James Triantos kind of doesn't have a defensive position despite amazing bat-to-ball skills. Kevin Alcantara represents an incredibly interesting piece that other teams might be attracted to. It's good defense, good raw exit velocities. We're kind of just waiting for playing time on him and perhaps some swing adjustments to lift the ball a bit more. But to me, it's Kevin Alcantara or some of the deeper international talent they have. I'm thinking of guys like Christian Hernandez or Juan Tomas that could actually get a deal done and make it attractive for both sides. But it may have to be a pairing with a team that is willing to wait some time down the road for these pieces they're getting back to convert into major league talent. A team with a longer timeline for their rebuild, which is why I think the Marlins are such an attractive destination for Jed Hoyer to have basically on speed dial. But I gotta say, to me, it's probably not Sandy coming to the Cubs. I kind of feel like he's a beautiful fit with the Mets. What about Edward Cabrera on the Marlins? This is kind of my wild card acquisition. He's a 27-year-old right-handed pitcher who hasn't really had a big workload over the last few seasons. The new Marlins pitching regime there already made some usage overhauls. He's throwing his slider more. He reworked his curveball to be one of the better shaped curveballs from a velocity standpoint in the game. He's got 3 years of control, all of them in arbitration. The cost will probably be suppressed because of his prior innings totals. He throws really hard, which the Cubs don't really have much of in their rotation. He's an arm that I think Tommy Hotovy and company would do a great job developing. He presents some strikeout upside. I know the walks are generally a problem with him, but he's kind of my pick that would impact this team positively, give them some runway of a pitcher with upside. And I don't think he would cost as much as Sandy and the other teams trying to go in on a guy like Sandy Alcantara. The internal arm that could solve their problems here is Cade Horton, their top pitching prospect, and I gotta say, he looks fantastic at AAA this season. I'll actually be releasing my top 30 Cubs prospects gradually this week, starting on Tuesday and running through Thursday, which coincides with our first Road to Wrigley live of the season. Myself, Elise Menaker, Jim Callis, and we'll have Alex Cohen in there as well. Thursday, 6 p.m. Central on Marquee Sports Network and the Marquee Sports Network app. In short, Horton underwent some pretty large mechanical changes this spring, and his shapes and velocity look fantastic. He's sitting 96 to 97, up from about 94 to 95 miles per hour last season. His fastball's carrying more, has a little bit more life. The slider is sweeping more. The changeup looks good. It's honestly ponies and rainbows for him. It's a clear uptick on a prospect in their org that I think heading into this offseason, a lot of the public outlets maybe turned down on slightly just because the workloads have been under what we would have hoped for a guy like Cade Horton. I think a lot of people expected him to come up last season, and he unfortunately ran into a subscap injury that shut him down and limited his total innings. Again, the issue here is the workload. If you're wondering who could be the best in that now open starting pitcher role on the Cubs, I think it's pretty clearly Horton over guys like Javier Assad or Jordan Wicks. But he just threw 34 innings last year. That's it, 34 innings between AA and AAA. He's more of a guy that I think logs around 100 this year on the season, and I expect the latter part of those innings, let's say maybe 20 to 30 of them, to be out of the bullpen. So while he may make a start this season in the bigs, and I think it'll be electric based on what we're seeing early this season at AAA, it's probably too much to assume that this is the guy that replaces a large portion of Steele's innings. And that's kind of the problem I think the Cubs are running into holistically here, is that they have a lot of really good options, strong options to cover innings. But I don't necessarily think they have a guy who could go 170 plus and cover those innings at a rate in which you'd be confident. Guys like Matt Boyd, Javier Assad, Jordan Wicks, all these guys I don't think have the ability to possess the upside to log 150 plus at like a sub 3 like Shota did last year. That was Justin Steele. And now Justin Steele is no longer on the team. So Hotovy and Counsell, they have a puzzle to piece together to figure out the back half of this rotation and allow this team to actualize the upside that I think a lot of us believe it has, primarily driven probably through the offense, which in prior years, it really wasn't done through. It was done through the pitching. So this is a very different Cubs team that we have. And like I said, it's going to be Colin Ray and likely Javier Assad with some Jordan Wicks mixed in the rest of the season. We'll likely break down Assad and Wicks at some point in the coming week, along with some thoughts on the Cubs' top prospects list of mine that I'll be rolling out that I mentioned. Monday, the Cubs stay on the West Coast to face the San Diego Padres in San Diego. It's Jameson Taillon versus Dylan Cease, another tough pitching matchup for the Cubs. But if you want to find any solace in the fact that Tyler Glasnow and Dylan Cease have very similar fastball slider shapes, maybe the Cubs have a very subtle advantage facing a guy that looked very similar to a pitcher that they saw on Sunday night and didn't really get to from a run standpoint, but if anything, Pete Crow Armstrong put his stamp on that game and the city of Los Angeles. 8:40 Central Time on Marquee Sports Network and the Marquee Sports Network app. We will see you tomorrow.